Started this out, oh gosh, 4 or 5 years ago, and I started out with just the VHF packet, just to see if I could do it and get it together. And once I got it together, then we started adding things on, and after a period of time, here we go. And we added the HF in and got it all doing. At first, I had this all running on my home computer that I was using for other things, and that doesn't really lend itself well to a gateway operation. You never know when something's going to happen, like this computer that I'm on right here. The last few days, I'll leave and come back, and it has shut itself off, and I don't know why yet. So if I leave the meeting, I'll come back, I promise. Anyway, this is just a kind of little cartoon view of how this is all put together. You can see we've got elements of ham radio, we've got elements of the PC system and the internet all put together. Cute little diagram. We've got an HF antenna going to an HF radio here. We've got this VHF UHF vertical antenna going to a 70 centimeter and a 2-meter radio. And they're all kind of together with these interfaces. Terminal node controllers. Every node in the system has to have a controller, no matter what they're called, whether they're hardware or whether they happen to be software. And my friend Bill Molt did this. He does all kinds of production work, and I really appreciate him for doing this. This call sign is K4LV. The heart of it really, though, is the computer, because it controls everything. It's the executive in the system. And you really need a good, solid internet connection. High speed, this one here is pretty darn good, and it runs pretty good. I'm lucky enough to live where they have fiber to our doorway, so we get a good connection. Any questions so far? Okay, let's move on. So the considerations here, come on you. Oops. The considerations for design, power and power distribution. Do you have continuity of power if you should lose commercial power? If you should lose commercial power for an extended period of time, will your battery power be able to be supplemented by solar? And if so, how long is that going to last? Will it take you through the night hours? All kinds of considerations. So obviously, the longer the nights, the more storage capacity you'll need to get to the next day. Antennas. Now this is kind of a biggie, and right now I'm still kind of in a shall we say, trans production mode, where I've got it going. I'm in still the design phase, and when I get to the deployment phase of it, and I'll get to that in a minute, there will be further considerations for the antennas so that we implement good radio engineering into the field. And I'll stop there for a second to say that I do have this gateway system installed at my home QTH right now. That never was the end all point, shall I say, for the location of this particular station. I do plan to put it about 3 miles away, up on a hill that's about 350 feet above my location as far as elevation goes. It happens to be owned by the city of Culver City, which we serve. My organization is Culver City Aries, and we're a direct affiliate with ARRL. And we work really tight with the city. They love us, we love them. And they have their radio site up there that they have given us space to do our thing. We have a repeater up there, and we have room for all this equipment that I'm showing you here today. And it will at some point move to that location about 3 miles away, hopefully this spring. My wife will love me for it, I think. So, antennas. Let's talk about HF for a second. HF, and let's talk about different antennas for different bands. Obviously, if you're in microwaves, you want a dish. You want a dish for HF, that's going to be so huge that it would not be feasible. So you've got obviously the different designs for antennas for the different bands, especially for HF. You've got to have, you know, it depends on what you're going to use for bands, but if you want it to be viable for a 24-hour station, you want to be able to scan different bands. 80 meters is going to work at night, great. Not so great during the day, but 40 meters, and sometimes, and even more so in these last few weeks, 20 meters is going to work even better. 30 meters is a good option, although it's not very big as far as the size of the band goes. Okay, antennas, enough said there. And the better engineering that you use, the better off your system is going to be. So it's not worth it to end up to try to put this into production on the cheap, you know, unless you really have to. You know, in an emergency, and if you got to throw something up and make it work, you know, you use what you got to use. Next is interfacing. There are different types of interfaces, and some are a little more efficient than others. And you've got different interfaces for the different types of systems that you've got. Say HF with the modes that they use, you might consider some radio like an IC 7300, or in this case, a Kenwood TS590SG. They both have built-in sound card interfaces. They both lend themselves very well to this application, and they have good filters, good receivers, and they put out a good signal, and they work well. Other modes, such as Pactor, you obviously need hardware there. There are software and sound card interfaces that you can use for 2 meters. And they say that you can use a DRA 65 type board with certain radios for 70 centimeters at 9600 baud. I have not seen it work. I've not tried to make it work myself. I really do prefer hardware when it comes to using packet, which we'll look at in just a little bit. The radios, you want good radios that, well, and I say that, I say that with my tongue in my cheek, because when I first started, I got the, you know, the cheapest used radios I could find, just so I could see if I could make it work before I went off the deep end and spent money on the good quality stuff that is what you'll want, because when it hits the fan, you don't want your stuff crapping out on you. You want stuff that's going to last. You want stuff that's going to work and work well. The computer system that you have to tie all this together, the brains, the executive of the whole thing, you've got to consider a few things about it. You don't want to necessarily bring in your old hand-me-down 2 or 3 times computer that will take a dump on you because things are just too old, you know, and they have a certain service life, and after that, you're done. You don't need a lot of storage unless you like to keep log files for a long time, like me. So I kind of went long on my storage, and you'll find out why if you should choose to do this as well. I chose to use, and by the way, the other thing is power requirements. Power requirements. Most of your desktop or laptop computer systems will need 120 volts AC to run. The laptops, they do have a battery, certainly. How long is it going to last? You just don't know, because if it's sitting idle and not doing much, it's going to last longer, obviously, than if it's handling a lot of traffic and doing a lot of things, a lot of disk activity to read and write data and all that. And the last thing I want to talk about is some connections to other systems, such as the APRS, or Automated Position Reporting System. There is a really nice Winlink tie-in to APRS. You can actually send and receive Winlink messages over APRS. Okay. And the last thing I wanted to mention was the ARADN, Amateur Radio Emergency Data Network. Back when I was showing you over my shoulder this this pan, tilt, and zoom camera here, it is actually connected to an ARADN mesh network, as is this voice over IP phone, about 40 bucks. This is about 200 because it has point, tilt, and zoom capabilities. I'm sorry, pan, tilt, and zoom. Any questions so far? All right. Oops, did it again. Okay, the first thing to consider is power. I mean, we did talk about capacity versus being able to charge it and how much you're going to use, all that. When I made this, these slides, this here is an 80 amp hour bio-NO battery. It is manufactured under the lithium iron phosphate compound, and it is quite light. It deep cycles very well with no adverse effects like a lead acid battery. You take it below, say, 10 volts or so on a 12-volt lead acid battery, you might not get it back. So you can destroy the lead acid batteries very easy. These batteries will deep cycle very well and come back very well, but they still have a service life just like any other battery. The only downside is they're quite expensive still. This 80 amp hour lithium iron phosphate battery cost me about 800 bucks. So you're figuring you want 80 amp hours, add a zero, and that's your price basically. And there are other companies out there. I'll show you actually the web page for the battery that this particular gateway is being powered by right now. I see we do have a couple of things in the chat buffer. I'm going to take a look at the chat buffer for just a second. I want to see what we got. Okay, Oscar from Puerto Rico says, what radios for HF multiband RMS station? RMS, or you're talking gateway station? You can use any HF radio that you feel that you want to employ, but remember, you're not going to get the use of it back as long as you have a gateway station that's in operation. The two that I feel are some of the best is the ICOM IC7300. That's 6 meters through 160 meters. I kind of went backwards there, sorry. Same with the Kenwood TS590 Sierra Golf. Okay. And let's see, ICOM 7300, very popular for Winlink RMS. That's correct, Phil. I've got one of those for my my home station here, and that's because it was a Kenwood TS590 SG as well. And there's a side story that is kind of sad. It was my first adventure into solar. Did not realize that these, well, I did realize that these solar panels, they provide a nominal 40 volts DC coming off your roof. However, there's a device that I use, and we'll talk about that in a couple of minutes, a device that I use that it controls the charging of the battery, whether it's from we set it to 14.6 volts, the power supply, or the solar. And then it goes into the battery, and then it gives you a good 13.8 volts out. Well, it only handles 30 volts. Well, I was happy, just doing my thing along one day, and I looked down, and I use these big battery systems that actually have a voltage readout on it. And I looked down because I noticed that on my 6 meter FM radio, which was off, all of a sudden the display was flickering and stuff. I looked down, that thing said 40 volts. And I look over at my Kenwood radio, my TS590 SG, and it was dead. And I took it to my good friend down in Placentia who can repair any Kenwood radio ever made. And he worked on it for about 2 weeks and then said, it's dead. So you learn by making mistakes, and hopefully you don't learn by making a $1,500 mistake. Okay. Let's see. I think, let's see, all these questions have been talking about that. Okay, and there Phil had the, okay, now someone else, Don had talked about arsfi.org, good deal. Okay, multiband, yes. This particular gateway is on 80 meters, 40 meters, and 20 meters. And it does pretty good on 20 meters as well, so especially lately here. What antennas do you recommend? I'm going to get into that when we go to the antenna page. And what, let's see. Love this graphic. Thank you very much. Oliver. Oliver's in there somewhere, my friend. Okay. This middle device right here, some of you probably recognize that it's a rig runner. This is an 8-port rig runner. It will handle 40 amps. So the input terminal over here at this end, I'm kind of moving my mouse here on the left end. That's where you put the input in from your battery system or your power system. If you've got a power system that I've got using where you got solar and battery and commercial all together, that's where this input will come in. By the way, if you do use this particular system, and I can't remember the name of the unit, let me try to figure it out here. Oh, it's a West Mountain Radio power gate is what Epic power gate is what they call it. But you can buy a voltage regulator that will handle the current that's needed, which is about 40 amps. And you can just throttle that down. I like to throttle it down to about 25 volts. I don't want to push the efficiency on the power gate unit. So when you got 25 volts, it still provides plenty of current into the battery system for charging, and of course out to your systems for operation. And when I was using the Bioenno battery, I certainly wanted to put it into some kind of enclosure. I didn't want it sitting out looking like an old battery. Any questions on the power systems? And go ahead and hit the space bar to ask your question, if you will. Okay, good. Let's move on. Antennas. Let's see, this is a shot of my house. And I think what I'm going to do is I've got all of these pictures and graphics in their own folder towards the end of the presentation. I'm going to take all of these and dump them into the chat buffer. So if you want to download and take a closer look at them, you're certainly welcome to. This is this left photo here. It shows the beam antenna on the roof, and that is for the home QTH operations. Obviously, it's not going to run 80 meters. This is a 20 through 10 meter 5-band antenna. It includes 12 and 17. And that's what that is. But if you see just below it, there is a wire antenna. Here's one leg of it, and here's the other leg of it. One goes to the front yard, one goes to the backyard, and it's a G5 RV. If you use a G5 RV, don't forget that there's a vertical component that's made up of about 22 feet of ladder line. And that you'll need to take into your considerations. I like the G5 RV because the 2 radios that I mentioned, and by all means, you don't have to use one of these 2 radios. You can use another radio, but if you're using a G5 RV, you'll need an antenna tuner. And then the internal antenna tuners in both the ICOM and the Kenwood radio that I mentioned handle the G5 RV very well, especially on 80, 40, and 20. Very little interaction, no interaction really when it comes down to it. It's a fire and forget weapon, shall they say. This here, this dish, I don't know if you can see this, I hope you can, but this dish antenna is for the Arden Mesh Network. It's a 5.8 gigahertz. It gets me into the network, and it's all happy. There's a TV antenna here that I won't mention. We'll just go right past that. Okay, moving on, we look at some of the vertical antennas that are employed. I'm trying to remember which one this is. Oh, this is a 6-meter vertical antenna. And over here next to it is the 2-meter and 70-centimeter dual band antenna. Now, both the 70-centimeter and 2-meter radios are attached. They don't need a duplexer because they're on different bands. So that's kind of cool with that. It is a fairly high gain, fairly tall, good sensitive antenna that'll receive from a good distance. It's a Comet. It's out of production, but it's a Comet dual bander that's about 12, 13 feet tall, I believe it is. No, excuse me. It's almost 18 feet tall. It's 17 plus feet tall. So you're getting some pretty good gain on especially 70 centimeters. So you want your antenna to hear, and you want it to be able to reach back out to the remote station and be able to pass the traffic. This view over here is just another side of it. And you can see all the stuff. And another view on the right side. This is the front yard end of the G5RV antenna, if you can see that. This is what I chose. You could very easily choose one of the higher quality vertical antennas for multiband HF operation. But you have to consider all the engineering questions that would go into it in order to weed out RFI. For instance, we sit here at the house and I'm in the den watching TV maybe, usually, or reading a book or something. And I'll hear in my home theater system, I'll start to hear the warbling of VARA HF or the shush, shush, shush of the Pactor modem while the radio transmits. Questions? Let's go back up to the chat buffer. Never heard of an ICOM relay issue other than the old Marine 710, which used many relays and switch bands. Kenwood has 0 issues, blah, blah, blah. Okay. TS570. Thank you for that, Steve. Steve, are you Steve Waterman?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. By the way, Steve is another member of the Winlink team. And he's the one who can make you a gateway operator. So you have to go through him. Be nice. Okay. Any other questions on antennas before we go further? Okay. Interfacing. This is what I use right here. I really like this particular terminal node controller. It's the Cantronics KPC 9612 Plus. It has 2 ports. It's got the 9600 baud port and it's got the 1200 baud port. You can purchase cables for the 2 radios that you're going to use on it. I believe that folks have had success with dual band radios. I have not tried it. I'm not sure that it's a great idea. For instance, a gentleman set up VARA FM on 145.03, just 1 band, using a SignalLink USB. By the way, that's what this baby is here. If you haven't seen one before, I mean, most of you probably have. Anyway, he set up a SignalLink with his FTM 400. And I'm thinking, what the heck? He is purchasing and employing a sledgehammer to drive a thumbtack. But that's just my thoughts. I use some, well, there's one radio I use, and you'll see it in a minute here, that's probably not using any of its capabilities except for one, but it works good, and that's what I had at the time. In the middle here is the SCS DR7400 backdoor modem. Oh, by the way, talking about prices, this here, the Cantronics is about 400. Originally, about 5 years ago, they came with a serial port, RS-232 serial port interface. Now they're USB interfaces, if you want to buy those. The downside to the DR7400 backdoor modem here, you can, by the way, you can buy the PTC3s, which only do backdoor 1 through 3. This DR7400 will do backdoor 4, which many of you know is not legal under FCC rules in the United States. I'm getting someone ringing the door. I hope my wife goes gets it. Does anyone have questions about backdoor 4?
It's the FCC.
Yeah, you know, and there is movement to try to get the FCC to allow us to revise it, you know, make a ruling on revising the rules. I hope there's another push here soon, because I remember when I got these things, and if you hadn't heard the word, US is the only nation that can't use it. Everyone else can use it. The thing is, every time we have a big natural disaster, you know, a regional natural disaster, such as a hurricane. Hello there, Oscar. You're down in Puerto Rico. Yeah, Hurricane Maria. We were allowed by the FCC to open our gateways to backdoor 4 traffic for disaster relief. The difference in throughput between backdoor 4 and backdoor 3 is quite significant when you start to get into the operational aspects of it. And like I said, the downside is they're kind of expensive. These are about $1,700-1,800, unless you can find one used on eBay. Take your chances if you buy your ticket there. This says not at AJ7C. That's actually not true anymore. I do have one that I'm using. At the time I made these slides, I was not using that because I was using the hardware equipment and the built-in sound card interfaces on the TS590SG. There are other interfaces, like I said, the DRA boards. They're made by Masters Communications, and they are really good. I actually use one of those for my VARA FM interface, which isn't, I don't have pictures of it in this particular presentation yet. We'll have to revise that. Any questions before we move on interfaces? Okay. One thing about the SignalLink interfaces is they do require associated software in order to function properly. And I see we have questions coming in. Here we go. Do you use the built-in antenna tuner with the G5RV at your location? Yes, I do. And was that with the IC7300? It's with the TS590SG. The IC7300 has one that works just as good. And I'll be honest with you, when I was first starting with all this, the major consideration is to get the Kenwood instead of the ICOM at the time was that the Kenwood has 2 antenna inputs for HF and the ICOM only has 1. That, you know, but then again, you could say, well, the ICOM has a spectrum scope and the Kenwood does not. So it's pick your poison. I think they're both great radios. They're both fairly affordable when you consider the cost of these HF radios. Okay, any questions there? Okay, Steve says, with the P4 Dragon modem, be careful. If you have a Part 90 type accepted radio, such as a Codan, you will need the Dragon 7800 for balanced audio. Good point there, Steve. Appreciate that. Let's see. So yeah, if you're going to use that, you got to get that. Okay, how is using the Cantronics controller different from using software on a PC for control. Well, it's only different in the fact that you have to use the software end of it to set all your parameters. And I won't say it's harder one way or another. It's just different. The one thing I will caution about, on any of these sound card interfaces, we are using a system that runs on Windows. I've seen Windows do this a number of times where you'll have Windows updates and everything works great, but there's been half dozen times where there will be a major Windows update and all of a sudden my sound card interfaces do not work. And the first time it happened, it threw me for a loop and I was down for a few hours trying to figure it out. And then I got to looking at my input and output devices in my software, and it had switched to something else. This can produce some really strange and quirky results. Like you all of a sudden start hearing these digital tones coming out the speaker of your computer or something like that. Not the thing you want to have happen in an emergency situation, of course. So I'm very careful with my Windows updates, and I make sure, and at least every other day, go in there and look, and I always verify operations after I do updates. Cantronics can be hit by lightning, and yes, they can. Okay. And so can the radios. You'll want to definitely consider all the engineering aspects when you're putting your system together and protect it from lightning strikes. Let's see. The benefits of the Cantronics is you do not need a PC running. That's correct. That's correct. But in order to interface it with Winlink in a gateway situation, you do. Let's see, since individual packets are sent and confirmed, have your one out, TR relays. Sorry, my reading is not, my eyes are not as good as they used to be. So I haven't found any real issues with things, wearing out. Again, the radio is about 4 or 5 years old. It's been running 24/7 pretty much since we started, and no issues. My local area supports both packet and VARA FM. Cool. And VARA FM is so much faster and cheaper that very few people use packet anymore. That's correct. That's correct. Even the 2-meter VARA FM puts 9600 baud packet to shame. And I'm going to talk about also using your interface to the Araden mesh network. The Araden mesh network really lends itself well to being your de facto standard, but you should always maintain proficiency on the other methods, all the radio methods, because these telnet post offices can run at internet speeds, and you're talking 150 MIPS over the air, or maybe not such a great connection. Maybe you're running 20 MIPS. That beats the heck out of even VARA FM. And anyway, I'll talk more about that, and we'll take questions on it just a little bit later. Okay. A better way to phrase my question. Okay, can everything the Cantronics does also be accomplished with a PC program using control of the station? I would say maybe. If the DRA boards will do 9600 baud packet on 70 centimeters, then yes. However, I'm not sure that'll work, but with the advent of VARA FM, I would say I would go with VARA FM. The thing is, when I started all this, we didn't even have VARA FM on the radar. It was just starting to ramp up. But VARA was definitely coming on the scene as an HF protocol That was a really, really a good thing to have, because when does anybody remember Winmore? You'll see Winmore in a minute. But
Intermittent.
I'm sorry?
Intermittent is spelled INTDRM.
Did someone have a question that I wasn't answering there? Okay, I'm gonna move on. Oh, good night, Oscar. I think.
I was saying good night to Oliver.
Okay. If you really want, you could bypass packet, but I think it's really such a robust protocol. I think it merits keeping it around, and at least until your equipment, ends its service life and goes away. That's why I keep the Cantronics and the 2-meter and 70-centimeter radios. By the way, I'll show you that. Where did I put the radios? There's the radios. I'm going to talk about the radios for a minute, since we got a lot of questions about them. When I started out, I was using the Kenwood TM241A. That's quite a few versions back. But it was a used radio, and again, I was just starting with it, and that's what I wanted to use. And I got it cheap. I used a Signal Link. I used a software modem. I used Sound Modem. Is the one. You can use Direwolf if you want as well. And it worked fine. I've replaced it to a current brand new radio, so that at least I know where I'm starting in terms of service life and how long it should last. And it's interfaced right into the Cantronics. The UHF radio that I use for 70 centimeters is a FT 7900. It's a dual band radio, so I'm only using half of its capability. But it has a 6-pin DIN port on the back of it. Lends itself great to doing 9600 baud packet, solid radio. This one here is the HF rig, the TS590SG. And again, built-in sound card really makes itself worthwhile to have around. And let's go back just a little bit on the slides. Any more questions about the interfacing? I will mention that for VARA FM, you can use a Signal Link. It works great. You just have to get all the levels set correctly. There's the pots here, the volume knobs on transmit, drive, and receive audio. Those work in tandem with your Windows sound levels. All that has to kind of get tuned all together until it works. Let's see, I'm going to open up the chat buffer and see what we got in there again. Would using Linux be a better choice for durability? You know what? I would say probably, but then again, Linux, still needs its updates from time to time. If you can remotely monitor the gateway and remotely manage it, using Windows is just fine. And I'll show you how I do that in just a minute. Okay, Winlink software it only runs on Windows. So if you were going to use Linux, you would have to use either an x86 machine, or you'd have to have an x86 emulator, and you'd have to use Wine in order to use Linux. There are issues with that, but that's kind of beyond our scope here. We welcome anyone who can develop Winlink Express and the RMS programs on Linux. Going once, going twice. Thank you for the pitch, Steve. That would be very nice. I agree. Link BPQ and a Raspberry Pi works great, and that's been proven. So if you're a Linux guy, a dear friend of mine, Orv Beach, W6BI, he's up about 35 miles away from me. He saw what I was doing here with this. And he and I, by the way, got together because we're both into the Arden Mesh Network in the big network we have here called Southern California Ham Net. So SoCal HamNet for short. And that's why he decided to institute his own gateway. And he took basically my setup here and patterned his after mine, with the exception of the backdoor modem. He didn't feel that $1,500 was worth his while, at least at this time. Okay. And by the way, he is a Linux guy who's, if he even had the time, he would do it. Okay, BPQ won't participate in the Winlink hybrid radio only HF network. That is correct. I wish they still made the FT7900. I do too. They're a great radio. Okay, let's move down to the next slide then. This is the software end of it that you may see. These are the interfaces for the HFN. If you remember this over here, this is the old Winmore TNC. Here's the RDOP TNC. And here is Vara HF. Look at those beautiful tones. Anyway, again, the radios. Any questions on any of this so far before I go to actually looking at the computer and what it looks like on the computer? Okay, good. I see nothing in the chat buffer. This is the computer I chose to use. It is a Intel Next Unit of Computing box, or called NUC box is the slang. The beauty of it is it lends itself very well to running headless. In other words, no mouse, no keyboard, no monitor. You remote into it over a network. I use virtual network controller. You can use any desk. There are other interfaces you can use to actually bring it up on your computer. The biggest advantage to it is no fans. Well, no fans to speak of. There's one fan on the processor, but you almost never hear it. All of the drives are solid state drives, and you can configure it with the M.2 drives or the standard serial ATA drives. Most of them you'll need to put a USB hub into. It also even has a sound input output device here that you can use with it. It's a little tricky, but it's doable. The biggest advantage though is it runs off of 15 volts DC. I can take the battery output from good old big battery behind me here through the Epic power gate, run it through my power distribution panel and right into the back of this. So it is hardened as well. It has some very wide operating temperature specifications. So if it gets cold, fine. If it gets hot, fine, at least to a point. Far more durable than a desktop PC system. Questions? Okay. This is what the desktop looks like. This is a snapshot. I'm actually gonna VNC into the current working system and show you the desktop in real time. And if somebody's close enough, they can call the gateway when we get cooked up and show what it looks like, because I want to explain the different pieces of software that you'll need to configure and use. That's actually the end of the slideshow. So let me grab up. What did I do? There we go. Let me get rid of that. I'm going to grab up the virtual network controller. And do some sharing of my screen for you. One downside to APRS on this is that when you get these notifications, like emergencies, they kind of splatter all over your display. And I'll show you this in a second. Okay, this is a real-time interface to the computer that runs the gateway. You see me closing all these. We have a CHP, the good old California Highway Patrol, that likes to, whenever they have an emergency on the freeway, they'll put repeated emergency calls on the APRS system. And it really kind of perturbs me. I would say makes me angry, but it doesn't really make me angry. It's just kind of annoying. And I'm trying to pull up everything. What the heck am I missing? I think I accidentally closed a program, which is not good. Accidentally closed the piece of software called RMS Trimode. I'm restarting it now. Matter of fact, I'm going to do something with this. I'm going to restart this whole system. It's going to take us a minute to get it all done, and I apologize. You can see this is an i5 3 gigahertz machine with 8 gigabytes of RAM, got a terabyte of storage. And so it's plenty fast. The one thing that I do have, like I said, running on this is this APRS gateway system, which is called an iGate. Some of you may be familiar with that. And the only reason I have it on here is just to add to the infrastructure and the fact that it interfaces well with the Winlink system. You can see how long it just actually takes to start these. Let's see, all right, this first one I'll talk about is RMS Packet. RMS Packet handles, obviously, Packet, but it also handles VARA FM. You can see down here, there's the time, how many connections I've had on port 1. Port 1 is 1200 baud packet on 2 meters. Port 2 is 9600 baud packet on 70 centimeters, and I've had 2 connections. Port 3 is VARA FM on 2 meters at 145.03, and I've had no connections on it. This is since 0000 Z, which is just a few hours ago. That's why we haven't had many connections, and I'm not sure what's happened with the system, but something's hung up. So, as a retired air traffic controller, I used to work in a tower, in a control tower, and one of the things we used to say was go around. And one of the first supervisors I ever had, he always said, a go around is like a giant toilet flush. It cleans out the system. Well, a reboot is like a giant toilet flush for your gateway computer. It cleans out the system. So you get to see me making sausage in real time here. We're going to hit restart. By the way, if you hit shut down and your remote computer is located 50 miles away, ooh, you got to drive 50 miles just to go hit the power button. Luckily for me, if I were to fat finger that shutdown instead of restart, I would only have to go a few feet behind me to hit the power button and restart the computer. It'll come back here in about 90 seconds. Let's go back to the chat buffer. Whoops, there it comes. By the way, I've got everything set up so that when it reboots, it logs me on and it launches all of the programs. Back to the chat buffer to see what we've got that's new. Intel NUC computer box. Somebody put down some links. That's good. Thank you. Nice presentation. Thank you, Jed. I appreciate the time. Thank you. Interesting from Jim. Thank you. I'm going to try to keep this as short as I can. Okay, we can see the APRS gate has started. I wait until I see that everything's okay. With sound modem's okay. And APRS IS is okay. I'll minimize that. This is sound modem. Many of you are familiar with this. There we go. We minimize that. Let's start bringing these windows up where we can look at them. What am I missing? Aha, my VARA. Some of you guys may have noticed this, but sometimes VARA doesn't start cleanly. All I do is have to hit update using my current settings. Now it's going to search for the TNC. And wow, look at there. There's the TNC. This is what it looks like when it's working in real time. Again, this is RMS packet. Again, it handles packet and VARA FM. This is RMS tri-mode. The reason it's called tri-mode is because originally there were only 3 modes that were in use. We didn't have VARA. So we had robust packet, we had Pactor, and back then it was WinMore. WinMore was replaced by RDOT. And then VARA HF came along and gave us a really slick high-speed protocol that rivals the speed of Pactor 4, which is kind of cool. So these two work independently, and they will work independently and never bother each other. They'll pass traffic on both HF and VHF, UHF simultaneously. But if you want to work it up as a hybrid network, and there are some advantages to it, I'll talk about that in a few. You tie it together with this thing called RMS Relay. And RMS Relay basically takes control of everything and says, I'm going to tell you when to do what and why. Here's your VARA HF modem. And up here is your RDOT HF modem. So does anybody want to give a call to the gateway that's close enough? I see one answer.
I tried it on 7 megahertz. I tried it on 14 megahertz and didn't get anything.
Okay, conditions maybe not supporting. So I'm not to be outdone then. We can. I'm going to pull up. Oh, look at there. There's an update to Winlink Express. I always say yes. I never say no. And there, oh, there's another update. Just to show you what this looks like when a connection comes in, I'm going to go ahead and make a, we'll do a VARA HF. You can see my, well, I'm not sharing that particular screen, but we're going to show you what it looks like really quick. You'll see me calling myself, and it's the weirdest thing you'll ever see. AJ7C calling AJ7C, but it works. Stand by. It's almost there. I kind of screwed the pooch there. I hit the dial and messed things up. So I'm going to stop this. Everything works when you try. I didn't want to try to connect at 90 watts. I wanted to dial it back to 10 watts. And you probably know why. is what you call an unexpected moment. Sorry. So now you see down here that we have an incoming connection. Now it says AJ7C is connected to AJ7C. We're connected at 2750 hertz, which is the wideband VARA FM. And we're talking back and forth at 270 bits per second. Or Phil, is that bits or bytes per second in this? Uh-oh, we may have lost Phil. Anyway, that's what an incoming connection looks like when it happens. And if you had noticed on RMS relay, my call sign came up in here. Do I have a LA Basin station on this presentation that can hit me on packet or VARA FM? Oliver, are you still on? Okay, let's see here. If you are having traffic in HF the same time with VHF, UHF, do you have any conflict? No, that's the good part. Because you've actually got two different software programs that are running the two different bandwidths anyhow. By the way, you can take 3 packet connections simultaneously, that they say, in RMS packet. I don't know how many simultaneously you can take if you have VARA FM going. Obviously, it's only one station can connect with VARA FM at once. So in theory, I guess you could have 4 connections at once. Let's see, Steve says, what is your dwell time between frequencies on tri-mode? I believe it's 6 seconds. I believe it is 6 seconds. Okay, remind me the difference between Winlink Express and RMS tri-mode. Winlink Express is the client system, the end user software application that you use. RMS tri-mode is a gateway software application, as is RMS packet. RMS relay then handles the interface between all of that. Okay. That's all of that. How many monitors do you have on the gateway? Let's see. That's Oscar asking the question. Monitors. Do you mean display monitors or frequency monitors?
Both. Display
Both.
monitor.
How many frequencies do I monitor?
That would be a good answer, both of them.
Okay. Okay, I'll actually show you there. There's set up the channels to scan in RMS tri-mode. In this,
I think he meant mode monitors.
okay. Well, this is where we answer that question. You can see I've got 3 frequencies in 3 different bands that the HF radio scans, all under the control of RMS tri-mode. It's interfaced up so that there's a computer-aided transceiver, CAT control, of the TS590SG, and it monitors 3597, 7102, and 14108. Bandwidth is wide on all of them. The start hour, these are the service hours, if you will. So it's 24-hour operation. P3 and P4 on all 3. P1 and P2 on all 3. RDUP on all 3. VARA on all 3, and I'm not doing robust packet. Okay, that's the way that's all set up. Now, Oscar, did you want to know about the monitored displays as well?
Yes, please.
Okay, I don't use a monitor connected to the computer itself. I'm remoting into it using a piece of software called Virtual Network Controller, or VNC, Victor November Charlie. Okay. Thank you, Phil. By the way, Phil, is the speeds that are shown on VARA HF, are they bits per second or bytes per second?
Well, honestly, I'm not sure, but when you run a session and connect with Winlink Express, at the end, it'll give you a summary of how fast the connection was.
Right. I think it's bits per second. I really do, because when you talk baud, that's always been bits per second. Anybody remember the 300 baud modems? Yeah, fun stuff. Okay, I think, let's see. I think I've pretty well covered all this stuff. Does anybody have questions on it? I want to show you what a VARA FM connection looks like. By the way, this latest VARA HF, the 2750 bandwidth, that's 2.75 megahertz. No, kilohertz. Almost said it wrong there. It's pretty darn fast. I ran a test yesterday and I sent a small file. It was basically a station pull from the network. In other words, you do a channel selection and you update the channels. So it was a channel update. And I did a radio request. Let's go ahead and do that. And then I'll run that quick session using VARA FM 2750 with 10 watts here connected. We'll see how long it takes. I was getting 3877 bits per second, which is pretty fast actually. And it's saying the channel's busy. I'm not sure why. Well, we'll choose a different channel then. By the way, this VARA HF modem and FM, VARA FM, it costs $69 to register it. If you're a member of a group that is heavily involved in income, a lot of times groups have gone in together for a group purchase of licenses. The license individually is $69 one time, and you get all of Jose's VARA software packages, and that's a lifetime thing. If you go into a group, I've heard of it as low as 50 bucks, maybe lower. I don't know. Okay, the channel's clear. Let's go ahead and make the call and see what kind of speeds we get. And we can see the gateway is on 7102, as are we. And so we're connecting. It's got an incoming connection. Now AJ7C is connected to AJ7C. You can see that the overhead stuff is, handshaking is starting at 175 bits per second. Now we're up to 270. That's what the growling sounds like, 270. Now you can see we're up to 1203 bits per second because we're passing data. You can actually see the 8 different bit streams. Okay, the request was sent, and this is going to terminate this particular session at the end of the request. Now the Winlink system, since it got the request, you can see it's identifying itself and saying bye-bye. It sent the request to the system. Now the Winlink system will send me that station list. So let's go ahead and start the session again and watch as that downloads. Well, it's scrolling through, you can see it's scrolling through 20 meters right now. It's pausing there. Now it's gone to 80 meters. As soon as it gets back to 40 meters, it should receive our call. There, now it's beginning to connect. Okay. The overhead's handled at these lower speeds. And when data begins to be passed, the sound will change completely. And the spectrum display will be very different. Starting to transfer there. So there's 3877 bits per second. And I'm watching the progress meter on Winlink Express, which you cannot see. I'm watching it come down. It's down about 40% now. And so now it's up to 66 or 8361 bytes transferred. Some of it's been at 3877. Now we're down to 3233. It's funny, some of the numbers that pop up as far as the speeds that it works. It transferred the whole file. And it's beginning a disconnect sequence. Okay, and my Winlink Express is telling me that it received and processed an RMS HF channels update message. Okay. So let me check this. May I ask a question by voice? Go ahead, Steve. Steve, KA6UGS from Cathedral City. Go ahead. I see you're unmuted, Steve, but I can't hear you yet.
There we go. Maybe you can hear me now.
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, I apologize. I've used Winlink Express some to just become familiar with the Winlink. And I guess my question is, if I wanted to build a gateway here in the Palm Springs area, that would be a VHF to UHF sort of gateway. We have a lot of people that have VHF systems, but don't have any access to HF. And in an emergency, that would be useful for them to be able to get messages out on HF. What are the basic components that would have to be purchased to do that, or assembled to do that?
To add HF to a VHF UHF system?
Yes.
Well, you'd need the components, the antennas, the power systems.
Right, all of that. I was thinking more software,
So-
the various software.
You don't have to buy any software. You get that from the Winlink development team.
And I know there are there's a process by which one has to go through, and rightly so, to become a gateway.
Correct. The first thing you need to do is you need to agree to the terms of the Winlink system to be a gateway system operator. If you agree to those terms, then you go through Steve Waterman. Steve Waterman, are you still on?
Yes.
Yeah, you go through Steve, and Steve, tell us what happens when you receive a request for a gateway operation.
I go to an administrative screen. I click a button. I put done, exclamation point, Steve, comma, K4CJX, and send back the email.
It's really easy. Steve usually gets back to you in a day. I've only had to ask him, I think, once or twice. One thing that you'll see too, you'll see in VHF and above, you'll see the gateway will use SSIDs. What I mean by that is you'll see mine is AJ7C-10. In HF, it's simply just AJ7C for the gateway call sign. I have to be careful with that because when I have my backdoor modem on, I stay off those frequencies that I'm monitoring, because my home station could be trying to answer a call that's for the gateway. Fun little things that you learn. But it's all on the winlink.org website, and I can bring that up and show you that. Let me see where I've got my web browsers.
Is there sort of a methodology by which one would select frequencies for monitoring if you're functioning as a gateway?
I would like to say yes, but no, we don't have a frequency manager is what we're really looking for.
You're limited on 500 hertz and above to the part 97.221 subbands.
Correct.
If
Okay.
you're under 500 hertz, you're not limited to those subbands.
Correct.
And there's no subband on some of the bands that we use, but there are over 400 radio message servers that are 2.2 to 2.4 kilohertz wide that exist in a 5 kilohertz space on 40 meters. And we're all trying to do something about all of that as well. I think that there's going to be some major shifts in regulatory process in spite of some of the proposals that have been put in recently.
Do you think, Steve, you think we're going to end up with a frequency manager that's regional or maybe nationwide even?
No, back when it first got started, there was a purpose in separating radio message servers.
Mhm.
But like I say, when you put 400 stations on that are 2.2 kilohertz apiece on a
Mhm.
5 kilohertz spread, there's not much management to that. There's just courtesy.
Yes. Yeah, you'll hear a lot of stations out there, and maybe they hear you, maybe they don't. And so,
Right. There's another issue that there's not any reciprocity or much reciprocity on HF like there is on VHF. You know, I can always hear you if you can always hear me. But on
correct.
HF, that's not necessarily the case.
Yeah, I'm having my trouble here with looking for where the Sysop end of it is. Can one of the Winlink guys help me?
What
Tell
are
me
you
where
looking for?
I'm looking for.
Look at
how-
tools.
Tools, how to become a system operator.
No. Oh, I'm sorry. No. Book support, book of knowledge.
Well, you can always find in the book of knowledge for sure. I wish my eyes saw better. Anyway, I'm going to try to find that. I promised I would give you all of my pictures so that you could try to peruse those at your leisure. And I'm gonna make good on that. So I'm gonna say gateway. I have to find it right quick. Winlink gateway presentation. There we go. So I'm gonna grab all these and throw them to you in the chat buffer if you wish to go and download those. I'm open for more questions.
Actually, we're going to have to start wrapping it up. We've been in this hour and 20 minutes so far.
Okay. I'm just about ready to wrap up because I'm just about petered out myself. But I'll take more questions while I'm trying to figure this out. Where I've got this. Here we go. Well, the bad part is I can only do these files one at a time. I don't think you want to sit and wait for all that. But the thing is, when you decide to go and make yourself a gateway, there's a lot to consider. And the first thing to consider is, do you want to, if you're going to put it at your house, at least temporarily, are you willing to give up HF for it? And that's what I ended up having to do. I figured that out after I flipped on the linear one day, and I think I only cranked it up to about 800 watts, but the problem was it was close enough in frequency to the machine back here that I ended up with only about $150 in repairs. But it was worth it because it taught me the lesson I needed. So, any other questions? All right. Well, we'll tie it up. Oops,
Sysop info. Excuse me, Sysop info in the chat.
Aha. Cool deal. I'm gonna share that out so that folks have the benefit of that. So to become a Sysop, yeah, this is the first place you want to go. You want to go to join the Gateway Sysop team. It's been a couple of years since I did this presentation, and that's the first thing I forgot. So you have to agree to the Sysop guidelines. They're not that hard, really, but it's just the standards for the community that we want to maintain. But the cool thing about this hybrid gateway, say that we live in earthquake country and we have a big earthquake and it kills the internet, but we still have local stations sending messages into my gateway. My gateway will then take those messages, and since it cannot send them out over the internet, it'll use HF to forward them to another gateway. And if that gateway cannot process them into the central mail server system, it'll send it to another gateway that can, until it finally gets there. That's the cool part about this system. If you can get it into a gateway, it'll find a way to get it out. Parting shots for anybody? Oops, I see two more things. Thanks, Kevin. You're welcome. How much would you think it would cost to get started? Great presentation. Thank you. Thank you, Sheila. It depends on how far you want to go with it. If you want to start with just a VARA FM gateway using RMS packet controls VARA FM, you could get started for as little as, well, if you don't buy the computer extra, if you use an on-hand laptop or something, or an on-hand desktop system, you could start for just the cost of a single band radio and a signal link. So we're talking the best radio, I think, or many think, for VARA FM is, believe it or not, an Alinco DR135. There are other single band radios that work really well, but that Alinco works great. This little guy right back here has been working VARA FM for a couple of years now. Oliver can attest to it. It works great. If you want to just do packet, again, you can use a signal link, and the software modem is free, and the radio and the interface plus the antenna, and you're on. Yes, I have a laptop. Cool deal. If you want to send me an email, if you have further questions, I'm good on qrz.com. That's a good email address. Otherwise, you can send it to president@ccares.net. That's Charlie Alpha Romeo Echo Sierra.net. Okay, any other questions before we go? Oh, DRA boards, also a good option for sound card. Yes, I love the DRA board. It's a fire and forget weapon too. There are a couple of pots that you have to adjust for sound levels, and then you have to get Windows to agree with it. Once you have all that done, it's good to go. Okay, Sheila. Definitely send me an email. president@ccares.net, or I'm good on qrz.com as well. It's a different address, but you can find me there. Obsoleted commercial Kenwood TK series VHF UHF radios can be begged from local county agencies. This is correct, yes. Especially true with the coming of the P25 trunking radios. Yeah, the P25 is getting all those analog radios obsolete. We're actually in, gosh, we're a couple of 2 levels down from the initial outroll of P25 here in the LA basin. You listen to the police frequencies, and if you don't have a P25 scanner, you're screwed. 'Cause all you'll hear is anything else. All right, folks, thank you for joining in. Dan, thank you so much for having me. I'll turn it back to you so you can end the session.
Okay. I think I have you removed from Spotlight. You want to lower your desktop?
And I am no longer sharing.
All right, cool. Well, thank you, Kevin. It's been a good presentation. I appreciate you coming on and doing that. When you get a chance tonight or tomorrow morning, send me your what you got of your presentation there on for the slides and stuff goes, and I'll get that out into the email thing.
Great.
This has been a long one, hour and 26 minutes. I'm not going to hold anybody any longer. Appreciate everybody coming here, and see you next week. With that, I'll say 73s.
Take care, Dan. Good to see everybody. Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you.
If you want to come back in after I close the deal and just chat with people, come right back in. It will work. Okay, 73s, everybody. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
73.